Welcome to this week's Practical 365 podcast, the podcast that keeps you up to date with what's new in Microsoft 365, whether that's the big announcements, the latest message center news, or what's cropped up on the Microsoft 365 roadmap. I'm your host, Steve Goodman, co-chief editor of Practical 365, and it's Friday, the 28th of November, 2019. So first up this week, we're going to go with Spotted in the Wild. Now, if you were wondering what was new this week in people's Office 365 tenants, then a couple of things have appeared. Azure AD conditional access baseline policies are going to be replaced by something else called security defaults. So if you already had baseline policies today, then these were controls that are enforced by default, and they allow things like all global admins to use multi-factor authentication, or perhaps people from risky locations and so on. Now, this is often not the best advice because it goes against stuff like making sure you've got a break glass account kept away somewhere in a box or something like that, in a safe with a key. So you don't want to always protect all of your accounts. You need one to get in around the back sometimes. So there is a welcome change here where we're getting security defaults, and they don't replace all of your existing conditional access policies if you've got those in place today. But if you haven't got any, then you'll have the option to enable these. And this is showing up right now. We're seeing it in the wild. And the concept of these are similar to those baseline policies. And they do things like enforce multi-factor authentication for administrators. I think there's a preview now for MFA for users, and we can block legacy authentication. And you'll find these in the Azure AD portal. And according to the documentation that goes with this, and we'll put a link to this in the podcast, these are available at no extra cost as well. And we're also starting to see sensitivity labels. Now, these got announced ages ago, and incrementally they've been showing up in different products like Outlook on mobile, in the Office apps on mobile, of course on the desktop as well, in the monthly builds, and now we're seeing these in the service for Microsoft Teams and Office 365 groups, and of course SharePoint site collections. And we blogged recently about how you could use classifications to provide information-only guidance. So when you go into a team or you create a team, you select a classification for the team, and people can read the guidance and they know, oh, I probably shouldn't share this with anyone else. It's sensitive information. Now, this works in a very similar way, but it's taking it to the next level. If you've got all the right licenses, of course, because if you create sensitivity labels in the same way through the Security and Compliance Center and apply these to the team or group or site, then the content gets protected as well as the site itself. So, for example, you could mandate that the team can't have external guests, so people won't be able to invite them, or you can make sure that there's policies to protect against the download of data, encryption, and so on. And we'll put a link to that new functionality for you to have a look at. But that's really good because classifications on their own fell a little bit short. So it's good to see that those were announced, but now they're actually out there in the wild. In the Message Center this week, we've got some notifications that you need to be aware of. So the Message Center, of course, is where you'll find in your Office 365 tenant the latest stuff that's relevant to you. And some of the key ones that we wanted to tell you about are here. So first of all, email notifications for Service Health are rolling out right now. That is MC 196504. If you want to make sure you get these notifications, assuming Exchange Online doesn't break, of course, then go into the Service Health preferences and add an email alert. And the monthly Intune updates are rolling out. That's MC 1967110. And the monthly updates include better reporting. I've seen somebody show this off now. It's really good. You can export stuff to Excel, view that there, much better, richer information. Windows 10 feature updates are in preview and support for that new feature we talked about on last week's show to allow you to configure S-MIME on Outlook for iOS. We'll put a link for that too. Now, there's some updates to SharePoint, of course, here. So if you're using the SharePoint modern settings for lists, then there's some updates here where you're going to be able to enable and disable the column totals in the modern view. You could do that in Classic. That's going to be easier if you're going to be configuring your lists there rather than going back into the back end. And there's an alternate way for configuring the document view. So you can have alternating colors when you're viewing a list of data. We'll put a link to the announcements for that, but that's hitting tenants right now, end of November, early December. More on the SharePoint updates. Loads of SharePoint stuff lately. MC196889. So when you onboard a new user, there's going to be a little announcement in the top right hand corner to encourage people with some next steps. So, hey, why don't you upload some new files, invite more people to the site? Maybe you want to make an announcement in your new communication site. It's going to encourage people into this right behaviors right from the go. Now, of course, if you've got specific guidance that you give, then this might conflict with it. So you want to be aware of that. There's some improvements to Office 365 message encryption OME MC196886. There's going to be a new layout, first of all, no Microsoft logo included. You can put your own, so make sure you've customized your tenant logo. And instead, the email will come from your own domain rather than messaging.onmicrosoft.com. And that gives some improvements to the validation of the email to prevent it being detected as spam. One note in there is if you want to capture the NDRs, then you need to create a bounces at yourdomain.com mailbox to capture NDRs. Of course, if you've got somebody called Bounces, then they've got a strange name, but they might get NDRs, so you better watch out for that one. And new on the Microsoft 365 roadmap, we've got conditional access for macOS with support for policies like multi-factor authentication, IP address ranges for access, and ensuring device compliance for Azure AD joined machines. That's item 16636. And also for Mac, we've got single sign-on across Office and OneDrive applications as well. Now, this is one that people have been waiting a very long time for, and Teams video is getting some improvements. So earlier when that launched in the year, that wasn't the best because it didn't have the media add-ins. The recommendations were to disable the ability for people to do calling and meetings from inside a VD environment, which of course, if you configure that, then it applies to everywhere for that user. Now, if you've got Citrix VDI environments in Azure, Citrix Cloud, on-premises, then they'll be getting these new features for media optimization, which is 56626. And it was promised within 30 days of Ignite as well. So it's showing up now on the roadmap, so it should be arriving very soon. And put a link to those Ignite announcements on the blog alongside this. Now, some more protection against people using Microsoft Forms. So if you've seen phishing messages that are coming from Microsoft Forms trying to collect data, then you'll see that these might bypass protections like ATP. Now, if 2 or more of these are detected, then it's going to block the user doing it. So one, that could be used as a way to potentially block users out of a tenant if people are reporting your users for sending suspicious looking forms, but it also gives you protection as well. That's 59216 and that's coming right now. And recommended profiles for Exchange Online Protection and Office 365 Advanced Threat Protection. 2 models, standard and strict. And this is going to make it much easier to implement those best practices in those services. And that's launching or arriving in December. And that's 59220. And we'll put a link to that too. And if you need to provide proof that when you've used the records management process to delete information from your tenant, then the list of the records that have been deleted using retention labels will be kept for a longer period of time for you to export. Now, some of the previously announced features that have moved to rolling out and launched, well, not quite rolling out just yet, but a change for December, the Teams Contact Center APIs are coming. Now, people have been waiting those for a long time, and that means that if you're running a contact center solution with Skype for Business at the moment and you're waiting for your vendor to update their software to work with Teams, then it's on the cusp of being launched. That's really good. And alongside that, in item 53939 is the Graph API for Presence. Hey, that could be good if you're using things like Busy Lights and Remote Advisor integration. And this was announced a while back, but now it's rolling out. OneDrive for Business file requests. You can send a link to somebody, giving them a place to upload files. So say you need to collect data from somebody, you say, all right, we're working on this together. I'm going to send you a link, upload this to a folder. Then you can give them upload only access to give you a file into your OneDrive. And that's item 27020. And also rolling out for OneDrive is Save for Later. So if you've seen that pinning files in Office, similar to that, but within OneDrive on the client itself. So if someone shares a file with you, save it for later, pick it up on the train or on the way home to have a look at. That is 49095. Now, service encryption for Exchange Online. You may have heard of things like customer key, where you bring your own key to encrypt data at the mailbox level, at rest rather than the individual items. Now, that is already available for SharePoint Online and OneDrive, and this allows you to use at-rest encryption with Microsoft's managed keys as well, similar to that customer key feature. This is 31171, and we'll put a link to read more about that functionality on the blog as well. And we had it last week for iOS, and now it's coming to Android. Meeting insights, so relevant documents and emails, they're going to be included when you look at the meeting description. That is 54545. And that's all we've got this week, and we'll be back for more Microsoft 365 news, so make sure you subscribe either at your favourite podcast app or over on practical365.com. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back for more news next week.